Blackwood Lake does not exist on any tourist map of Montana. If you type its name into Google Maps, all you will see is a dark green patch of forest, hidden among the cold mountains of Northern America. No hotels, no gas stations, no official campsites, no signs that anyone ever intended people to visit that place. But the residents of Grayford know exactly where it is. They just do not like talking about it. Blackwood Lake lies more than 30 miles from Grayford, deep inside an ancient pine forest. The road leading there is a narrow dirt track winding between towering trees. In winter, snow buries the road completely. In summer, fog crawls down from the mountains like pale hands dragging themselves across the ground. People say the lake has no bottom. They also say that if you stand on its shore after midnight, you will hear a voice calling your name from beneath the water. I used to think it was just another ghost story from a small American town, until I heard my mother's voice calling me from beneath the lake. My mother had been dead for 5 years. My name is Daniel Reed. At the time, I was 27 years old and worked as a freelance journalist for a magazine that specialized in strange disappearances across rural America. I arrived in Grayford at the end of October, when Montana's forests had already begun turning gray. The sky hung low and heavy, as if a storm had become trapped above the mountains. The town was so small you could drive through it in less than 5 minutes. One diner, one gas station, one sheriff's office, a few rows of weathered wooden buildings and a white church leaning slightly beneath a hill. I came because of the disappearance of Jacob Harris. Jacob was a forest ranger, 36 years old, single, no debts, no criminal record, no reason to vanish. His pickup truck had been found near Blackwood Lake. The driver's door stood open. The keys were still in the ignition. On the passenger seat sat a radio, a still warm coffee thermos, and a water-damaged notebook. The final page contained only one sentence: "Do not answer if it calls your name." The story would have been strange enough already. But Jacob was not the first person to disappear around Blackwood Lake. Over 20 years, 6 people had vanished in the area. A married couple camping for the weekend, a wildlife photographer, a hunter, a geology student, and now Jacob. No bodies, no unusual footprints, no signs of animal attacks. Only one detail repeated in the testimonies of those who survived their encounters with the lake. Every single one of them heard someone calling their name from the water. I met Sheriff Earl Mason on my first afternoon in Grayford. He was around 60, with a silver mustache and the exhausted eyes of a man who had seen too much and no longer had the strength to explain it. When I told him I intended to visit Blackwood Lake, he stared at me for a long moment. "You are the third journalist in 10 years to ask me about that place," he said. "What happened to the other 2? I asked. He remained silent. I understood the answer. "Do you think Jacob is still alive, Sheriff?" Mason leaned back in his chair and stared out the window. Outside, the wind pushed dead leaves along the empty street. "No," he said quietly. "I think if he is lucky, he is dead." The sentence sent a chill through me. Before I left, he handed me an old map and circled an area west of the lake. "If you are determined to go, do not camp near the shore. Do not stay out after dark. And if you hear someone calling your name—" "I know," I interrupted. "Do not answer." He looked at me with something close to pity. "It is more than that," he said. "Do not believe it is someone you love." That evening I rented a room at the town's only motel. The owner, a woman named Marlene, was in her 50s, with red hair beginning to gray. When she saw my camera equipment, recorder, and flashlight spread across the table, she immediately asked if I was there because of Blackwood. I nodded. Marlene sat across from me and folded her trembling hands. "My younger brother disappeared there in 1998, she said. I switched on my recorder. She told me that her brother, Thomas, loved night fishing. One summer evening, he went to Blackwood Lake with 2 friends. Around 3 in the morning, one of them ran back to town in a panic. According to him, Thomas had heard their mother's voice calling from beneath the lake. Their mother was in a hospital in Missoula. At the time, more than 200 miles Away. Thomas walked toward the water. His friend tried to stop him, but Thomas kept staring at the lake as though hypnotized. He said, "Mom is freezing. She needs my help." Then he stepped into the water. He did not swim. He did not struggle. He simply walked straight downward until the water closed above his head. The others searched for him immediately. Nothing. No bubbles. No screams. No body. 3 days later, their mother died in the hospital. Before she passed away, she briefly woke from a coma and said something the family never forgot. Thomas was standing at the foot of my bed. He was soaking wet. He said, "There are many people down there." Marlene stopped talking. Her eyes were wet, but she did not cry. "Do you want my honest advice?" she asked. "I am listening. Leave tomorrow morning." I thanked her for the story. Then I went back to my room, checked my batteries, cleaned my camera lens, and told myself that fear made people exaggerate. I did not leave. The next day I drove to Blackwood Lake. The road was worse than I expected. My rental Jeep bounced violently over roots and rocks. Pine trees towered on both sides of the road like silent judges. No birds sang. No squirrels rustled through the branches. The silence felt unnatural, almost deliberate. Near noon, I finally arrived. Blackwood Lake appeared beyond the trees like a black wound carved into the forest. Its surface was impossibly still. The water was so dark it seemed to absorb light. Abandoned cabins stood along the shoreline, their roofs collapsing inward. The resort had once been popular in the 1970s, before the disappearances forced it to shut down. I pitched my tent about 200 meters from the shore, exactly as the sheriff had advised. For the first few hours, everything remained normal. I filmed the cabins, recorded the wind through the pines, and took photographs of the old dock. There were no footprints around the water. No signs of recent visitors. Only the smell of wet leaves and the heavy silence of the lake. Then I entered cabin number 6. The door hung half open. Inside smelled of mold, rotting wood, and old smoke. Old photographs still covered the walls. Tourists smiling beside the lake. Children holding fish. Families gathered around campfires. But one photograph made me freeze. It showed the lake at night. A man stood with his back to the camera, staring at the water. Floating faintly above the black surface were dozens of pale human faces. They were not reflections. They were looking upward from beneath the water. I raised my camera for a closer look. A voice suddenly spoke behind me. "Do not touch that." I spun around. A woman stood in the doorway. She wore a ranger's jacket, her blonde hair tied back. Her face was pale and exhausted. A handgun rested in her hand. I raised both palms and introduced myself. She lowered the gun slowly. "I know who you are," she replied. "I am Sarah Collins. I worked with Jacob." Sarah was the last person known to have spoken with Jacob before his disappearance. When I asked about him, her expression darkened. "He started hearing it 3 months before he vanished," she said. Hearing what? His fiancée's voice. I remembered the file. Jacob had never been married. Sarah saw my confusion. "She died 3 weeks before their wedding," Sarah explained. "Car accident outside Helena." According to Sarah, Jacob began hearing Emily's voice from the lake at night. At first only near the water. Then inside his house. Inside his truck. Through a radio with no batteries. Through running water. Eventually he stopped sleeping. He told Sarah that whenever he closed his eyes, he saw himself standing on the lake bed, surrounded by the missing. All of them staring upward. 1 week before he vanished, Jacob told her something that kept her awake ever since. "It does not want me to come down," he said. "It wants me to invite it up." Sarah looked toward the lake while she spoke, as if afraid it might hear her. The native tribes had stories about this place, she said. They did not call it Blackwood. They called it the place where water keeps the voices of the dead. But I do not think what is down there is dead. "What do you think it is?" I asked. "I think it learned how to pretend." That afternoon, Sarah agreed to show me where Jacob had vanished. We walked along the western shore, where the trees leaned over the water and the ground turned soft beneath our boots. The air grew colder. With every step, the place where Jacob disappeared was a stone ledge jutting over the lake. On the rock were long white scratches, as if someone had clawed at it with broken fingernails. Sarah crouched beside them. "We found blood here," she said. "Not enough to prove he died. Could an animal have dragged him away? No tracks, no fur, no drag marks. Only Jacob's footprints, leading to the edge. Then, nothing." She hesitated before speaking. "Again, there is something the report did not mention. After Jacob vanished, we found his phone in the truck. It had recorded audio through the night." Sarah took out her own phone and played a copy of the file. At first there was only wind and the soft lap of water against stone. Then Jacob's voice appeared, shaking. "Emily," a woman's voice answered from far away. "Jacob, I am so cold. You cannot be." "Emily," he said. "You promised you would never leave me," she replied. "Emily is dead." There was a long silence. Then the woman's voice changed. It grew deeper, warped, layered with other voices beneath it. "Then why can you still hear me?" Jacob began to cry. Then came footsteps on stone. Water moved. Jacob screamed. Not in pain. In terror. Beneath his scream, I heard many voices whispering together. "Daniel." I jerked backward. "Stop it," I said. Sarah paused the recording. "What did you hear?" I did not answer. Because in Jacob's recording, something had just called my name. The sky darkened earlier than it should have. Sarah told me to pack my things and leave immediately. But before we could reach my jeep, rain began pouring down in sheets. The dirt road turned into mud. My tires spun uselessly on the slope. Within minutes, the jeep was stuck. Sarah looked at the sky, then at the lake. Her face went pale. "We are staying in the tent," she said. "No lights facing the water. No talking after midnight. No answering anything." "Have you stayed here overnight before?" I asked. "Once." "What happened?" She swallowed. "I saw my father standing in the lake." "Is he dead?" "He killed himself when I was 16. She said nothing else. At 11:40 that night, the rain stopped. The forest became so silent I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I placed my recorder between us in the tent. Sarah sat across from me, her hand never far from the gun. At 12:03, the first sound came. Plop. Like a stone dropping into the lake. Plop. The second sounded closer. Plop. The third sounded so near I thought it had landed outside the tent. Sarah whispered, "Do not speak." Then came footsteps. Slow, wet, careful. They circled the tent once. Then twice. Then a third time. I held my breath. A man's voice spoke from just beyond the fabric. "Sarah." She closed her eyes. The voice was gentle and tired. "Daughter, open the door for me." Sarah began to shake. Tears ran down her face. But she made no sound. "I am sorry," the voice continued. "I never wanted to leave you." Her hand tightened around the gun. Outside, the voice began to weep. "It is so cold down here, Sarah. I only want to see you once." Sarah bit her lip until it bled. Then the crying stopped. A few seconds of silence followed. Then it laughed. A hollow, waterlogged laugh that did not belong to any human throat. "Are you still angry with me?" At that moment, a face pressed against the outside of the tent. The fabric stretched around the shape of a nose, a mouth, and sunken eyes. It looked like a man's face, but too long, too thin, too wrong. Its mouth opened wider than any living mouth should. Sarah screamed and fired 3 times. The shots tore through the tent. The face disappeared. I rushed to unzip the flap, but Sarah grabbed my wrist. "Do not." I opened it only a few inches. Outside, nothing stood there. Only darkness, fog, wet trees, and the smell of cold mud. Then I saw the lake. The water was moving. Not with wind. The center of the lake bulged upward, as if something enormous was rising beneath it. From the water came hundreds of whispers. Daniel, Sarah, Jacob, Thomas, Marlene, Mason. Names of the living. Names of the dead. Names of people who had never been near the lake. Sarah dragged me back and sealed the tent. "You saw it," she said. "Saw what?" "It knows you saw it." After that, the night Changed. At 1:15, my radio switched on by itself. I had removed the batteries earlier to charge them. Still, static hissed from the speaker. Between bursts of noise, I heard my mother's voice. Daniel, my body went cold. My mother died of lung cancer in 2014. In her final months, her voice had become weak and cracked from medicine and coughing. But the voice in the radio was not that voice. It was the voice she had when I was a child. Warm, gentle, safe. Son, why will you not listen to me? My throat tightened. Sarah whispered, it is not her. But the voice continued. Daniel, I miss you. I know you still blame yourself. I started trembling because it was true. The night my mother died, I was not at the hospital. I was drunk in a bar, angry and ashamed. Because I could not bear to watch her fade away. By the time I arrived, she had been dead for 17 minutes. No one in Grayford knew that. No one except me. You did not come, my mother's voice said. I called for you. I covered my ears. Stop it, I whispered. Sarah looked at me in horror. What did you just say? I realized my mistake too late. Outside the tent, every sound stopped. Then, from the direction of the lake, my mother's voice came again, clearer than before. Daniel answered. The ground beneath the tent trembled. A dragging sound rose from the darkness. Something heavy was crawling through the mud. Sarah stood up. We have to move. Now. Where? The old ranger cabin. It has a generator and a stronger door than this tent. We grabbed what we could and ran into the fog. Behind us, the dragging sound grew louder. I did not turn around. But I heard my mother calling through the trees. Daniel, do not leave me again. I nearly stopped. Sarah pulled me forward with all her strength. Run, the ranger cabin stood half a mile away. By the time we reached it, my lungs burned and my legs were numb. Sarah shoved me inside, slammed the door, and locked every bolt. The cabin smelled of dust, oil, and old paper. There was a wooden table, a radio, a tool cabinet, and one window facing the lake. Sarah started the generator. The yellow bulb overhead flickered, then glowed. Does the radio work? I asked. We will find out. She tried calling the ranger office. Only static answered. Through the window, I saw figures standing at the tree line. Many figures. Their clothes were soaked. Their skin was pale. Their eyes were black and empty. Sarah saw them too. Do not look at their faces, she said. But I had already recognized one of them. Jacob Harris stepped forward. His ranger uniform was torn. His skin was swollen from water. His mouth smiled while his eyes remained dead. Sarah backed away. Jacob placed one wet hand on the glass. Sarah, he said. I found Emily. Sarah raised the gun. Jacob's smile widened. Down there, nothing hurts. Down there, no one has to be alone. Behind him, the others lifted their heads. Then they began to speak. Each one had a different voice. My mother. Sarah's father. Marlene's brother. Jacob's fiancé. All of them blended into one enormous whisper. Around the cabin. Open the door. Open the door. Open the door. The door shook. A heavy blow struck it from outside. Boom. Then another. Boom. Sarah dragged a cabinet against it. I searched the room and found a locked drawer under the desk. Inside were old files, maps, cassette tapes, and a leather journal. The name on the cover was Evelyn Ward. I recognized it from town records. Evelyn and her husband had owned the Blackwood Lake Resort before disappearing in 1978. I opened the journal with shaking hands. The early pages described cabins, guests, fishing contests, and summer dances. But later, the handwriting became uneven. August 12, 1978. Guests are complaining about voices at night. They say dead relatives are calling from the lake. Harold tells me not to worry. But last night I heard Lily. Lily has never been here. Lily died last year. August 15th. Harold went to the dock. At 2 in the morning. I heard him talking to someone. When he came back, he was soaked from head to toe, though he swore he never stepped into the water. He said Lily wants to come home. August 19th. I saw people under the lake. They were standing beneath the surface. Not floating. Not sinking. Just standing there, looking up. August 22nd. The thing in the Lake does not kill immediately. It wears people like clothing. It uses their memories. It learns their voices. The more it is answered, the closer it can walk to shore. The final page contained one sentence, written again and again. If it knows your name, it already has part of you. The door shook again. The hinges bent inward. Sarah shouted for me to find another way out. There was a trapdoor beneath a rug. It led to a narrow crawlspace under the cabin. We slipped through just as the front door burst open. Through gaps in the floorboards, I saw wet feet stepping into the room. Water dripped onto the wood. A voice spoke above us. My mother's voice. Daniel is hiding under the floor. I froze. A pale hand pushed through a broken board. Its joints bent the wrong way. Black nails scraped the wood inches from my face. Sarah dragged me through the crawlspace. We reached a small opening behind the cabin and crawled out into freezing mud. We ran for my Jeep. But when we reached it, all 4 tires had been slashed. Across the windshield, someone had written in mud, "Do not leave. Mother is here." I fell against the side of the Jeep. Everything inside me broke. Sarah slapped me hard across the face. "Listen to me," she said. "It is not your mother. It uses guilt. That is how it pulls you under." "How do we stop it?" She looked toward the lake. Jacob believed there was something at the old boathouse. A bell. A bell, before the resort was built, the tribe supposedly kept a warning bell near the water. When it rang, people left the shore. Jacob thought it might force them back. Do you believe that? I believe bullets do not kill what is already dead. We ran toward the old boathouse. It leaned over the water like a corpse, about to fall in. Rotten posts rose from the lake like ribs. At the end of the dock, hanging from a rusted iron frame, was a large bronze bell. Black moss covered its surface. Strange symbols were carved around its rim. As soon as we stepped onto the dock, the surface of the lake began to boil. Faces appeared beneath the water. Dozens. Hundreds. All staring at us. Sarah ran to the bell. I grabbed a rusted iron bar and struck it. The bell screamed. Through the night. The lake convulsed. The faces beneath the surface twisted in pain. I struck it. Again. The figures on the shore staggered backward. Sarah yelled. Again. I raised the iron bar. Before I could strike a third time, a hand grabbed my ankle from between the dock planks. I slammed face first onto the wood. Below me, Jacob stared upward through the gap. "Daniel," he whispered. "Your mother wants to see you." I kicked him, but his grip tightened like steel. Then a figure rose from the lake. My mother. She stood on the black surface as if it were glass. She wore her hospital gown. Her hair was thin from chemotherapy. Her face looked peaceful. "Son," she said, "I forgive you." I began to cry. Sarah shouted somewhere behind me, but her voice sounded far away. My mother reached out one hand. "Just come down here," she said. "The pain will end." I wanted to believe her. God help me, I wanted to believe it was her. I wanted to hear that she forgave me. I wanted one more chance to hold her hand before she died. I crawled toward the edge. Sarah threw herself at me and pulled me back. The thing wearing my mother's face looked at Sarah. Its smile vanished. "Do not take my son from me." The voice shattered into hundreds of voices at once. The lake behind her rose up. The black water opened, and I saw the truth beneath. Blackwood Lake. It had no single shape. It was a vast black mass of faces, arms, hair, bones, and open mouths. It stretched beneath the entire lake like the lake itself was its body. The missing were not trapped inside it. They were part of it. I understood then. Blackwood Lake did not contain a monster. Blackwood Lake was the monster. With the last of my strength, I swung the iron bar and struck the bell a third time. The sound exploded across the forest. Blood ran from my ears. The lake split into violent rings. The thing wearing my mother's face melted, stretching into a scream that made no sound. Sarah pulled me to my feet. "Run," we ran from the dock as the whole lake thrashed. Behind us, figures on the shore collapsed into black water. Trees shook. The ground cracked. Along the bank, we ran until our lungs failed. Somehow, near dawn, we reached the main road. A logging truck found us walking barefoot through the mud, bleeding and half conscious. Sheriff Mason came to the hospital that afternoon. He did not ask many questions. He simply looked at me and said, "You heard it, did you not?" I nodded. "And you answered." I could not speak. He sighed. "Then never be near water alone again." After that, the authorities closed the Blackwood Lake area, officially because of landslide danger. No one mentioned Jacob. No one mentioned the faces beneath the water. Sarah left Montana 1 month later. I left journalism entirely. I moved to Arizona, where the air was dry. And the nearest lake was hours away. For 3 years, I lived normally. Almost normally. I avoided swimming pools. I avoided rivers. I never took baths. I washed my hands quickly and never looked too long into a dark drain. Then, last night, I was washing my face in a motel bathroom outside Reno. The faucet water suddenly turned ice cold. The mirror fogged over. From the sink drain, I heard a tiny whisper. "Daniel." I shut off the faucet immediately. But the water in the sink did not drain. It remained there, growing darker, deeper. Impossible. Then a pale hand slowly emerged from the black water and gripped the edge of the sink. On the fogged mirror, words appeared one letter at a time. "Mother found you. I am writing this account from a cheap room in Nevada. The bathtub is full. Though I never turned it on. Something has been whispering from behind the bathroom door for the past hour. Sometimes it sounds like my mother. Sometimes it sounds like Jacob. Sometimes it sounds like Sarah, though I do not know if Sarah is still alive. I do not know how much time I have left. But I understand the truth now. I should have understood it years ago. The thing in Blackwood Lake no longer needs the lake. It only needs an answer. So if one night you hear the voice of someone you loved, someone who died long ago, calling your name from the darkness, do not answer. If it calls from a radio, do not answer. If it calls from a phone, do not answer. If it calls from a faucet, a sink, a river, a dream, or the rain tapping against your window, do not answer. No matter how familiar the voice sounds, no matter how much it cries, no matter how much it begs, no matter if it says it forgives you, do not answer. Because the dead do not call us back. Only something pretending to be them does. And once it knows you can hear it, it will never stop calling your name.